Hi, Henny, how are you? Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, I'm Teknikolour. Can you believe that Christmas is next week? I feel like I have so much still to prepare for, but I am very much in the holiday spirit and decided to build a mountain home in Copperdale that's all set for Christmas. I'm not entirely sure why I decided to build a mountain home in Copperdale, specifically for Christmas theme build, but I just looked it up. Last year, I built 2 little cabins in Copperdale for Christmas. If you were to do a Christmas themed build, what world would you choose to make it in and why? I've always lived in the city, so it's kind of funny to me that I always choose this stereotypical Christmas cabin. I should build a New York City apartment for a Christmas build sometime. Anyway, I decided to build this on the Bridge Creek Drive lot in Copperdale's Plumbite Cove neighborhood. I also knew that I was going to be messing with terrain with this build, so I knew I wanted to basically get everything done and then hopefully not break it at the end when I got to terrain. I've always been so intimidated by terrain manipulation, so very rarely do I even attempt it. I'm happy to say that I have definitely gotten better at my terrain this past year, but a TikTok by Safreen came up on my For You feed the other day that taught me something new. I'll link her video down below, but she basically explained what those lines mean when you're playing around with the terrain tool. I never paid that much attention to them, but they represent levels and every 4th line equals a stair level. So those thicker lines you see when working with terrain tools, that's what your stairs would need to snap to. Otherwise, you'll see your stairs sort of digging down into the terrain. It's kind of incredible how you can be playing a game or working with some sort of tool or software for years and still not be aware of all of its intricacies. Again, go check out Safreen's video in the description, but I was shocked to learn about this. But it's one of those things that once you know it, it all makes sense. At least it did to me. That tip alone has basically demystified terrain manipulation for me. So much so that I wanted to work on a build where the terrain would be a major aspect of it. So here we are, a mountain home in Copperdale. I honestly can't wait to try out more builds with terrain manipulation in the future now. Also, I should mention that if you're planning on buying any Sims packs, I have a creator code, Teknikolour, that you can use when checking out on the EA app. It's not a discount code, unfortunately, but each time you use my code, a portion of your sale, instead of all of it going directly to EA, goes to me. It's a really easy way to support my content, and I really appreciate it. I talked about this in my last video too, but if you didn't know, there's been a recent EA buyout, which is worrying a lot of Simmers, myself included. We don't know how this buyout will impact the franchise, and a game we all love, because it has such great representation, and the Sims team continues to put in the work to learn and research underrepresented communities and bring them into The Sims 4. This buyout could mean very little in terms of changes we'll see in the game, or it could mean reversal of inclusionary practices going forward, or even removal of many things that make The Sims 4 great. A few have decided to take a step back from The Sims, but since we don't really know what's going to happen, I'm going to continue making Sims content, and I urge you to look into this buyout yourself. Let The Sims and EA know how you feel about it. If that means that you're not really comfortable giving your money to EA and not buying packs or anything, I understand. If you'd still like to support me in some way, the best thing you can do is keep watching these videos and interacting with them. Or follow me over on twitch.tv, where I live stream both The Sims and other games like Palia, Light Up the Town, and Uncharted. At this point in the build, we've basically completed the overall shape. I wanted this to be 2 floors, though the second floor turned out to be a lot smaller than I thought it would be. Roofing was also quite a struggle because I wanted it to look good, but for you to be also able to see into the second floor. Sometimes roof pieces can be weird and cover up an entire floor, and so you need to split it into multiple roof pieces. That was basically the issue that I faced here. But overall, I think the second floor and roofing came out nicely. I don't love that one part of a wall can't be painted. It would change the roof paint of the actual roof piece. So I just hit it with a closet. Figuring out a floor plan for this was also slightly more difficult than I had anticipated. Placing the stairs where I did was basically necessary to make the most use out of the space upstairs. But it definitely split the first floor into two main sections. One on the right side of the stairs, which is quite spacious, and a long rectangle on the left with less room. I decided the best idea was to just embrace it, especially since I was putting a fireplace in that bump out where the chimney is. Once I started to visualize where the TV and sofa could go, the solution became so clear. We basically give ourselves a hallway towards the front of the house that leads to the living room and upstairs, or the dining room, and then the rest of the first floor. Since I knew where the living and dining rooms were going to be, that really left that long rectangular block for a bathroom and kitchen. I think that I ended up taking advantage of the space here really well though. It left us with a bathroom on the larger side, which is good since it's the only one in the house, a smaller mudroom sort of space leading out to the deck, and a rather spacious kitchen. I use cabinets that I don't typically use, but do like, the ones from For Rent. I think I like these cabinets overall, but the upper cabinets can be super restricting, so I tend to gravitate towards cabinets that are more solid. You know how certain upper cabinets can have pieces that don't look great used more than once, like tiled together? For instance, this one has, I believe, a left end piece that has a paper towel holder on it, but it looks so strange if it's far from where you place the sink. In this case, it is far from my sink, but I think because I put the blender and some other smaller appliances on that side, it feels less out of place. I was also pleasantly surprised by how well the life and death appliances, like the fridge, range, and dishwasher, matched with the kitchen cabinet hardware. I think I generally won't go for this swatch since it's so neutral compared to the others. And when using these, I go for more bold, but they fit in perfectly here. The living room is truly the star of this build. Well, honestly, I think by the end of this video, that might end up being a tie between the living room and the dining room, which is right across the hall. Since I knew where the fireplace and television were going to go, we sort of already had this room planned out, and it left a pretty sizable space between the archway and the staircase that would feel quite empty. I'm gonna let you know now, in my builds, this almost never happens. I don't know how I managed to get away with it this time, but it became the perfect spot for a Christmas tree and tons of present piles. I build a lot, and a fair amount of those builds are with gameplay in mind, especially for my own legacy save. Do I ever remember to leave enough room for a Christmas tree or really any other holiday decorations? No. I think there was really only one generation in my legacy where I specifically had a space for the tree itself, and the rooms in that build were already on the smaller side too. I really lucked out here with this floor plan because everything just sort of fit, and I had to do little adjusting from my original ideas when tackling each room. I think that this would be a great living room to spend Christmas morning in. There's a lot of seating between the sofa, love seat, and two chairs. Plus, it just feels more airy than some of my other builds. Like, there's enough space to walk around and to not feel quite as cramped or claustrophobic. It's a little sad that the tree itself is behind the seating area because naturally they'd be facing the television. I personally have my tree right next to my television, and it's so nice to get all snuggly on the couch while watching a movie and having the tree on right next to it. We actually had space for 2 mudrooms in this build, which I suppose makes sense given the terrain. I don't know. But we have one in the back of the house leading out to the deck and another in the front serving as the entry to the home. For some reason, I decided to tackle the mudroom in the back of the house first. I figured I could include a little hall tree to drop off bags and coats and stuff, and also sit down to put your shoes on. But I also expected to have enough space to make this room more functional. Since it's so close to the kitchen, I liked the idea of having a desk here, so you could come right here to pull up a recipe or something. Plus, a bar to prepare drinks for the festivities. I'm not much of a drinker, but I feel like when it comes to the holidays, or gatherings in general, my family mostly ends up in the kitchen. So it makes sense to me to have a bar located here, even though it's a bit further from the living and dining rooms. It also is close to the deck, which is where you might find yourself spending a fair amount of time, too. In the front mudroom or entry, I decided to add an actual closet or armoire to hang up coats, as well as a little table with a lamp to welcome you home. Plus, by the large windows, I have a nice couch, so there's enough room for everyone to get ready and throw their shoes on. There was even just enough space for a little display on that back wall. The dining room, much like the living room, is an important space for the holidays. So I knew that I needed to lock in and design a space that felt appropriately cozy. I don't know if I succeeded, mostly because it felt like this room was a tad smaller than I would have preferred. It's not a huge deal. It still fits a table and some other decor like plants, but for functionality's sake, I went a bit more minimal with furniture in here. My parents' dining room, for instance, is similar in size to this, but has much more furniture in it. There's not a ton of space to move around. Someone is definitely going to have to get up and to let you pass, but it's still nice and cozy. That's what I was going for here, especially with all of the holiday decorations. Moving upstairs, we have a nice-sized primary bedroom, a landing off of the stairs, and a small guest bedroom. Originally, I had planned for this entire space to be the primary bedroom, but it ended up just being a little too much room for what I needed. This is nice because it has enough space for 2 bedrooms and a landing space that doesn't feel too cramped or tight. Additionally, the primary bedroom practically has a walk-in closet off to the side that would be a great sell, at least for me. I also decided to decorate these bedrooms with some cooler colors, I guess representing the season. Outside on the deck, I placed a grill in that tiny covered spot next to the door and chimney, with a nice picnic bench off to the side by the door. This basically left us with a ton of space on the other half of the deck, which I turned into a sort of outdoor living room. There's basically the same amount of seating as in the actual living room and a fireplace to keep warm by. Personally, I think I'd love visiting this house, especially if this outdoor fireplace could keep you warm enough during the winter. Maybe that's not really a thing in reality, but it's definitely a thing in my version of The Sims. Then, in that little corner near the staircase, I put a decorated tree. Like, imagine how nice this house would be to spend Christmas at. I mean, if you could keep warm both out here and inside having the 2 trees, it just feels so festive and cozy. Can I spend Christmas here? I also added some festive lighting behind the seating area as well. While I'm mostly putting some finishing details everywhere, I feel like now might be a great time to mention my book club. This month, we've been reading The White Christmas Inn by Colleen Wright. I'm filming this video in advance, so I have less to do before I leave for the holidays. So in reality, I've only just started it, but it's nice so far. If you're interested, I'll drop the link to my Ko-fi page below. It's kind of where my whole book club idea came together. Putting the finishing details on this build literally just felt like decorating for the holiday and less like remembering to put out a few last clutter and decor items. Remember earlier when I said that I fully embraced terrain manipulation with this Copperdale mountain home, and then you've literally seen 0 evidence of that? Well, here you go. Again, I am by no means a terrain expert, but I had a lot of fun playing around with the terrain tools here. Especially since now I know more about how to get staircases to work with my terrain. You'll notice that it took some trial and error to figure out the best placement on the lot for the build, the right foundation height for what I wanted, and how to use the terrain to get the 2 staircases to work as expected. I think something I could benefit from with terrain is learning exactly how to smooth hills out and have a better transition between the edge of the lot and the start of the higher terrain. Still, I think this might be my best attempt at creating a mountain home. I really loved that I blocked off an area for a yard and then maintained that level there so my fencing wouldn't curve upwards or downwards at all. Plus, I did want to be able to decorate with actual landscaping, so I kept spaces in mind for that. Though I did realize I would likely be using the tool mod to raise and rotate those items as necessary. I think the part that really sells this as a mountain home, aside from the obvious hilly terrain, is all of the trees. I loved putting those pine trees in the back and also taking my cues from the landscaping surrounding the lot to decide what trees or shrubs or whatever I could use here. Then a fair amount of it was spent making sizing and height adjustments using Tool to make sure things weren't floating and that they looked like they were actually growing in their individual spots. A few minutes ago, I mentioned that I have a book club. Well, would you believe that I was actively working on this terrain and landscaping and the latter portion of decorating this house while finishing our November book club book? I was so far behind. This last book, I swear, was very difficult for me to keep track of all the characters and plot lines. I really hope that this new Christmassy story is going to be a little more light reading because I could use the break. I'm only saying this because you might be wondering, what does he do while he builds? Sometimes I'll watch videos or other streams. Usually I'm listening to music. But while working on this Christmas build, I was listening to a crime thriller. Yep, probably not what you expected. But anyways, this is the end of the speed build, so why don't I hop on into the game so I can give you a short tour. So here we are in Copperdale, and this is my winter mountain home, and I just think it looks so beautiful out here in the snow. In build mode, you can see it's just a little bit different without all of the snow, but it's still cozy. Here's an aerial shot of the house now, and you just go directly through the front door into this mudroom, and it's pretty spacious. And then it has this hallway that leads directly to the other half of the house, which I'll get to in a moment. But over here in the front of the house is the dining room, and it just feels so perfect for the holidays. And then, of course, you have the living room decorated all for Christmas. You have the tree, you have all of the presents. And then if you go back down that hallway, you have the kitchen, which is really spacious for a build like this. And then you have a full bathroom. And then in the back, you have another mudroom that leads directly out onto the deck. Up the stairs in the living room, you are brought to this stair landing, and then right over here, you have the primary bedroom, and there is, of course, that big closet. And then just down here is a guest room, which is perfect for anyone staying over for the holiday. If you'd like to add this build to your game, you can grab it off of the gallery using my EA ID, Teknikolour. If you enjoyed this build, please drop me a like. If you want to see more of my builds, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want even more Sims content, consider dropping me a follow over on Twitch. I play my pack-based Legacy Challenge every Thursday. Planning on picking up high school years or any other packs? Please consider using my creator code, Teknikolour, at checkout on the EA app. It's free for you and supports the channel. Plus, my code can now be used on so many other EA titles, not just The Sims. But thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.